There's my regular paint medium and my egg yolk. This is what I use when I travel.
What medium is it?
It's a lean medium, which is 1 part oil, 1 part varnish, and 1 part turpenoid. Regular lean medium. And then I mix an equal amount of egg yolk in it, mix it up. And then I add a cap of vinegar, which I buy when I get there. The vinegar keeps the insects out and preserves the egg yolk pretty well. It's cheaper than if you buy what you have to buy in the art store to do the same thing. And there it is. Okay. Then I...
Oil paint?
Huh?
You're using oil paint then? Is this oil?
Watercolor.
Watercolor.
The reason I do it is because I can take tubed watercolor, it's lighter, travel with it, and use it up. But you have to use the tube. You can't use the cake. It won't work.
Use the oil medium with the watercolor.
Yeah, it's for oil paint. I'll show you. And it lasts is a pretty good time, so you're not hurting. It's a simple mix, which I mix up very carefully and keep it quiet, very quiet, and inexpensive. You can actually buy the egg medium, the watercolor medium, the oil medium if you want, but I make it because it's cheaper. I make it by the gallon, you know. I do this just to keep my brushes from being too, so I can clean them and get them ready for watercolor again, because I don't usually use the same brushes. I use different brushes for everything.
Frank, what's the oil medium?
1 part oil, 1 part Damar, and 1 part turpenoid. That's a lean medium. It's good for everything. I make it, I have to, when I get to a country, I go to the art store and I buy it, and then I make a medium there, and then I use it. I use the egg yolk because the egg yolk dries a little faster, which you'll see, and we'll see what it does with the color. And the idea of the watercolor, tubed watercolor, is that the tubed watercolor is lighter, so you can take 3, 4 tubes, and that's it. That's all you need. Theoretically. So I'll run this and. Yeah, weight and occupation. Like you can throw it in your sack, and what I do is I usually put it in a a little plastic container, throw it in there and throw it in the bottom of my suitcase, and then they don't bother it, you know. They shoot everything, you know. And I keep the basic idea relatively primitive. But you'll see how it goes on. So I can use almost anything as an idea, so I'll play around. There we go. Now, normally I would do half a dozen sketches, but we'll keep this simple. I'll take that whole bunch and make a large plane out of it. You can see it goes on just like a regular watercolor, but it dries well and cheaper than oil paint when you're traveling. Now I had a panel, but I lost it, so we're out of luck. I wanted to show these because this is what I use almost every day. If you see me out in the park painting, this is what I use. And then when I go back to the studio, if I like any of the sketches, I usually line them up, do drawings from them, then tear those down and work from the sketches. So I'm constantly removing myself from the literal, because the literal will interfere with your abstraction if you hang on to it too long. But if you look at the basic idea, what you're after, you get a pretty good idea of what you were trying to play with. Okay, I can sign it now. Now I'll tone it a little bit, knock down the strength of it. And it's equal parts of yogurt, of the yolk of the egg, equal part, one yolk, and then equal part of that yolk with your oil mix, and then a cap of vinegar to preserve it. Now when you're working with a double board, even if you're going to frame it separately at some point, you always want to cross over that line so that it becomes one piece. Otherwise it'll always be separate no matter what you do. So which usually takes me about a week to do what I'm doing in a couple minutes here, is I reduced all the colors to shift of simple planes to get the action of the color moving across the surface, which gives you the light and the strength of the painting. You can also play around with the stems. So I always look at actions where there's a lot of stems and play with those. I expand them off and they become more dominant in the painting, depending on how I feel and how I move. But it gives me a quick relationship to something rather than be lost and just have marks on the surface. Okay, now a little terps. Okay, as you're marking up your surface, what you're really paying attention to, or you should be, is the relationship of this space to the action of your color. There's two things you can do. You can either keep the white paper, add white to it and push it around and move it into the painting, or you can change it by tinting the paper color. So it's either or. I often use the color because when you have color, the white calms it down quite a bit. So depending on how lively I get, which one never knows, And this is all tubed watercolor, as you can see. Nothing extraordinaire, except I tend to mix it right on a pallet. I don't usually have this much room. I usually have a little box about that big. And I just dip it in and mix it like I would regular paint. But for sakes of clarity, I'll do this, So I mix the egg yolk right in the color. And then play with the green as a rhythmic idea in relationship to the idea of the painting. One never knows what will happen in the process, but often it works. Very interesting. I'll be damned. So you can see this thing is coming along pretty simply. Doesn't take a lot of ingenuity or genius to do an abstraction from a literal scene if you can divorce yourself from the literal and look for the light of the color and its rhythm. The rhythm you put on the painting, at some point the painting takes over and it tells you what to do. You don't tell it. It will get annoyed if you do. It's drying pretty fast, which is the action of the egg. It dries fast and a little harder than normal as you work it. Now I use 300-pound paper because when you're painting in mediums like this, you want some weight, otherwise the paper will crumple. So you have to spend a little money on the paper, but remember, you have both sides. So if you don't like one side, flip it over, do another one. Okay, now we can play with this a little bit. It's starting to sprinkle up just a little. That's nice. Pull it forward here. Okay, the red is getting reduced by the green, so we can either extend the red or we can decide to push it into another color, depending on how you feel. I'm not too easily annoyed, so I will plane it up a little bit to pull it up ahead in this area of the painting. Flip it in here, extend it, let it go pink at the bottom. Spin this color here. Come on, there we go. So now the red is getting a little brighter, I think, and that helps the action of the green and puts it in its place. Of course, we haven't finished yet. We've still got the stems to play with. But keeping your forms a simple abstract shape is an easy way to develop the idea or the statement of a color than it is if it's too expressive, because then you got the form that's taken over and you have to kind of deal with that. And that's a different world, but that's okay. One thing at a time. Now, so far so good. Here we go. What we have to do as we're working these, you have to push-pull the action of your color in relationship to each other, so they're not all sitting on one plane. So you're always shifting it so it's slightly shifting and moving. So you can watch it go across the plane and shift forward, backward. And it doesn't have to be big shifts. It can be quiet, it can be soft. Depends on the personality of the painter and the idea of their action, what they really want to say, if anything. Okay, here we go. Now we're going to do something entirely different here. That's as good. Now we're going to play with something that's really going to be strange. Where the hell did that thing go to? Oh, here it is. Oh no, that's not what I'm looking for. That's what I'm looking for. Okay. I'm always mixing the medium into the paint. That's the trick. And of course, you can't keep this paint. Once you've used it, you just throw it away. It won't hold. I know a lot of people don't like that. They like to keep it, and then they end up with strange smells in their bathroom, in red refrigerators. Yeah, I only use it with the tube watercolor because it's cheaper. I'm just showing, if I'm traveling, say, to London, and I'm going to go out in the countryside, I don't want to carry a lot of weight.
Can you use both of them together?
Oh yeah, you can use it with almost anything.
So if I was working with watercolor and
Yeah, and then you can just take your medium and work right into your oil. Okay, now here we go. I'll take that medium here. Well, I'll be damned. I don't like that. Now you look for certain streams in that you can use that can excite the action of your piece without too much work. I don't like a lot of work, as people know. I figure if I'm working too much, I'm in trouble. So you can feel that it juice up. Now you can play next to that because it dries pretty fast. So if I want to play against this action and bury it, I tip a little tone here. I pull that into that mass by tempering it. Now, the beauty of working in this medium is if you pick up the wrong color or your brushes get a little too dirty, you can just clean them up and then let that dry and run I'll show you, I'm going to run a red right over the top of it. Okay, here we go. Let me get a bottom going here. All right. So I can make this almost look like oil paint by the thickness of the pigment. The egg does the rest for me. It's a very cheap way to travel, I want to tell you. I've only been doing this for about 50 years. You get used to it after a while. You know? Okay, now let's shoot up a little deeper idea. So anything you put down, you can push to another position simply by overlapping or stroking it against something. It'll pull it forward and into a position towards your eye or away from your eye as you overlap it. So you see painters do this. That's why I try to get you guys to go to the museum and see real art, which you avoid for some reason. And you'll see how they use it like an elbow or a wrist or a sword. And what they're doing is they're tempering the volume around it to push it to a different position. So they're not really bad painters. They just know what they're doing, you know. And that's sad because a lot of people, they don't understand that, you know. They think the guy got the sword in the wrong place. Okay. Now comes the fun part. This is gouache. The watercolor is nightmare. I mean, I wouldn't do it if it wasn't simple. It would upset me, you know. It means I'm working too much. If you're working too much, you're not painting enough, you know. Sweat does not make great art. Calmness makes great art. All the energy sits inside and waits, you know. But if you let it participate too much, you can lose your painting. Come on. Now normally, we'd make another medium about now, but that's okay. We're not looking for purity anyway. Now, here we go. I'm going to pull the white up over the edge of this here, bringing it into the painting. Turning it, when I'm done, you'll think it's an oil painting, I swear. Of course, you'd be wrong, but that's okay. And I've left the red to have its own strength. Haven't destroyed it too much. And I keep the bottom usually very simple and very soft, which I'm always telling you guys when I'm looking at your work, because I don't want people to spend a lot of time at the bottom of my painting. It means I'm dead, you know. I tell you, I keep doing this, I get better each time, I must say. Very odd. So this is what I do when you see me out in the park every once in a while painting. This is what I'm using. Nothing complicated. And then you watch me, I take the jar and I throw it in the trash because once it's used, it's gone. It's every day you have to mix it. So that annoys some people for some reason. I mean, I'm lazy, but I'm not stupid. You know. Now, by pulling the white up between the forms once in a while, you're shifting and moving the weight of the volume. You're just pulling it towards the eye by giving it weight. And a little tonal difference makes a big difference. Now, I'm going to do something really dumb. See how that works out. Yellow, the color everybody's afraid of. I've never understood why. Now I've got a bunch of eggs here, so you guys can use them if you want. Because I can't use them. I can't take them home. Make a lousy omelet when they're been laying around the sun too long. Yeah. Yeah, it's quick drying. Sure, and it lasts you, you know, I tell people you got to frame them because it's on paper. You don't want it to get dirty because it's hard to clean. If it was on a panel, less of a problem.
And you can't put light over dark.
You always put dark over light, but if you're trying to tone something, you can put a dark over a light over a dark, and then that dark will interact over time, but it takes, you'll be dead by the time you have to worry about it, you know.
No worries.
Yeah, you know, don't press yourself, you know. And whenever you throw something up, you spread it around. You never leave it in just one area of the painting. and walk away, because that's the only area anybody will look at. And then you'll get annoyed, and it won't be their fault, it's your fault. Okay, I don't want to fill it up too much. Give it a sense of action. And this is called a lyrical abstraction, because it's based on the setting of a natural existence of stems of color that you reduced in sensibility. Give it a whole different reality. Isn't that wonderful? I think that's just wonderful. Okay, don't want to do too much here, it'll kill it. Remember that whatever you do, let me get a palette knife, I'll do one. Do I have a palette knife? No. Where the hell, oh, there it is. The palette knife comes up flatter. That's all.
What about it like a narrow palette?
Same thing. You can streak it though. The more you streak it, the more it'll build up. So you're building up the volume by the stroke. Whenever you throw a lot of strokes in, you're building up the volume. But I use anything that's at hand, a stick if I can, can't find a brush. Okay, I might have to make another medium if I keep working. I don't want to do that. Too much job. Here we go. Well, it looks pretty solid. It looks like a painting, I think. Because what do I know? Okay. So here's what we're going to do.
Sometimes when you do the watercolor demonstrations, you'll take a wet towel and wipe it. Can you do that with this as well?
You have to use turpenoid, and then you got a mess because it'll intermix. Watercolor, which I show you guys, watercolor is much easier to deal with because you can spritz it, it'll disappear. But when you work it with like a paint, different ball game. You have to live with what you get. You're just out of luck. You do another one. So we'll tear this down and see if we can do something. And you notice you didn't get a lot of runs. You got a few, but not as many as you do with a regular watercolor when I'm doing it straight up and down like this. And this is pretty much dry already. So it's right, almost dry. Another half hour to be completely dry. That's a big advantage, especially if you're outdoors and the sun's hot. Yeah. Okay, let's see what we got. Okay, there you are, a painting. Now, when you're working outdoors, you usually work in small panels and small shapes, so this is much quicker. And you use smaller brushes, so you can have more fun with it. You can take up, say, the movement of a tree, flatten it out and make a beautiful shape, stop, work around it, and then whatever color you work around that edge, you throw a little bit on the inside to give it light. By that time, this shape will be dry, so you'll be able to work it. It should work pretty good on wood panels. Now, often if I work on a wood panel, I'll take the mix that I made, the egg yolk mix, and I'll cover the panel. And then I'll work on it while it's wet. And the interaction of that seems to work out pretty good. Of course, one never knows until you try.